Hey, good.
This is
Hello. Jason Smith.
the supervisor.
So I'm here as corporate memory. I've been with the project since it started.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Institutional knowledge.
Yes.
That's what we need.
Brian Stiff,
Hello, how are you doing?
supervisor.
Good seeing you. Nice to meet you.
I'm Hank Johnson from Somet.
How are you, sir?
Very well.
Good.
Congressman, good to see you.
Good to see you, too. How are you? Yeah, of course. Sorry we're delayed a little bit.
Good to see you again.
We were at the goat
Welcome back.
farm and it lasted a little
The
bit.
goat
Yeah, so,
Probably a lot more fun in here anyway.
That's right.
you know, it is an unbelievable operation right in Bloomsdale. So, I mean, it's
And they won national and international awards.
over 60 national and international awards.
Yeah.
Cheese tastes really good too. So it's nice. We started our farm tour today, so that's why I'm
Oh, but very
a little
good.
bit
Yeah.
dressed down. So I apologize for that, but glad to meet you. And where do you want me to sit there? Oh, that's scary.
If I'd have known that, I'd have said.
Oh, Bob, would you like to hear that?
Hello.
Here, you want to trade me
Darren
shots?
Lingle, good to see you.
So it's we're meeting at your request, so we don't have an agenda.
Oh, really?
So you're it.
Oh, well, that's always nice.
Although, what I took the liberty of inviting stakeholders. Hank owns the Beckett Revolt House and is currently undergoing remodeling, which is next to or adjacent to the state property, and that kind of area is what the Park Service has been targeting as the most likely area to recommend, if they choose to recommend, a small footprint state or national park in St. Genevieve. And, you know, all we know is kind of what we've heard through meetings, and Bob's been keeping really close tabs with the project manager. So we think we know what's going on. Is that what you want to know?
That's what I want to know.
Okay.
I want to be briefed exactly to know where we're at and if there's something that we need to be doing, and just to know where the process is.
I'm going to let, Bob, if you don't mind, I'm going to let him give you kind of the update and the timeline. I do want to emphasize that it's been going on a long time, and Bob will explain that to you. And in the time that I've been involved, I think the community is unanimously in favor of something happening. And I know from a tourism perspective and from city administration perspective, you know, we think this is an important possibility for the city that will support a lot of the things that have been going on in St. Genevieve for a very long time.
Has there been public meetings
We've
where
had
people can express themselves?
One public meeting in August of 2012. And that was there was really two parts to that meeting. There was a public meeting and then a governmental meeting to discuss options and things of that sort. There's various phases of doing a national park site study. The original law was passed, I think, October 11, 2006. And it called for a 3-year study. Well, they didn't have money originally, so we're going into, I think, what is our 7th year now of the 3-year study. So it's taken a little bit longer, but first you have to, they had to make sure that it was appropriate to have a national park here, that the history was there. And since St. Genevieve has the best collection.
I think that's pretty easy to discover.
Yeah, but it took a year to get to that. And that was finished, and then they start looking at options. They have to get to looking at sustainability and what the footprint's going to be. And then they publish a public report, and that's what we're waiting on now. It's been going back. It was supposed to be out last August, but there was one question raised. Then they went back and forth between Washington and the project office. It's now in editing. The last results I got just the other day. But then it has to go, we have to get permission to print it. They're now saying about November that this will come out to the public. At that point, then they have another public meeting, and that will be here. And then they go back, and the last thing they have to do is figure out how they're going to manage it. You know, a lot of national parks can have multiple sites and all that. I don't think that's what they're going to recommend. We've not seen what they recommend. But we believe it's going to be a much more manageable kind of operation. But according to the latest schedule that they gave me, or us, it looks like they won't get the final report and recommendations to the director of the National Park System until about September of 2015, so another year from now. At that point, the director will get with you and the Senator McCaskill and Senator Blunt to talk about when to release the report, because there's always some political parts that come to play in that. At that point, then, as the National Parks always said, Congress has to do the appropriations for the park itself, you know, and you have the ability to do that at any time. Even there's been instances where Congress has went ahead with a park before the report was even came out. So that's kind of what the timetable for us is.
The only question there is, you know, what kind of money would be needed from that sense.
You know, and they're considering all the options. Our expectations really are not that we're going to have this major park. I mean, we think together with the state and the city, you know, the staffing needs would be minor. And the most important thing is the designation for us.
Yeah. Having that arrowhead on the highway would be an economic boon for us. I think there was an article in the paper earlier this year about what national parks have done across Missouri, and I think the smallest park was the, Toby, do you remember?
It was the Grants Farm, not the main.
Not Whitehaven, it was the one for down in southwest Missouri, but I think it had.
Washington Carver's?
Yeah, Washington Carver, and it had like 10,000 visitors to it. That would be a significant advantage, and being on a major highway, having that arrowhead on the highway would be a draw to us.
It's definitely without a doubt having a national park designation allows people that travel that they would know more about it than a state park if they're from a neighboring state or if they're from West Virginia. So
Literally puts you on the map.
it does.
Well, and Bob, you might explain too how the affiliated
Oh, yes.
area
Well,
will
and,
affect the city.
yeah, they can also assign an affiliated area, because we have a historic district here, but we also have houses spread throughout that historic district and even other houses that are outside. And if they put this affiliated area together, we can work together on projects. I think the National Park Service brings a lot of research capabilities, signage capabilities, that sort of thing, that could help these other entities working together to make this a very viable destination for people.
Could we say that we had 3 reports, is that right, so far, sort of progress reports this year from the Parks Department?
Yeah,
and that
probably
they,
about that 3
that they are very positive?
That was one of the interesting things. They did say that they mentioned a positive recommendation. And, you know, that with the unfunded maintenance that they have, they're not really prone to put out positive recommendations, but we've been led to believe that they will have a positive recommendation here.
Yeah, I think the statement was that the reason it was taking so long to get the report done was that they sought the approval of everyone that needed to approve it before they ever took it to Congress, when it was going to be a positive recommendation.
One of the nice things about this is the state's involvement in what they've done already, to where we're thinking, and we know that they're thinking about where they're putting the park at, is that the state already owns almost everything that's there. And they've been more than cooperative in trying to get this thing done, and
They've been working with us from the beginning.
Yeah.
In fact, they went and the previous site administrator went to Congress and testified.
So is the properties that you're seeking for the designation currently owned by the state?
Some of it.
We aren't really seeking a property. I mean, you started out saying, we'll just make the whole city a national park. After we had these meetings, you know, they kind of have led us to the conclusion that they want to minimize the footprint of the park. They don't want to overreach. And we have just kind of concluded, because there's a certain synergy that can be realized working with the state on property that the state owns and manages, that by a cooperative arrangement, everybody's management costs could be reduced by having this combination going on. And we have the Beckett Remote House and the State House and Green Tree Tavern, three of the kind of major vertical log structures are there. The big field is visible across the road, which is a huge part of the St. Genevieve story, and they just kind of naturally have told us that that's the place. I mean, that's where we need to be.
So, okay, where's the area that you're wanting the designation?
Down
We
on
don't
Seventh.
care. I'm telling you what they want, what they're
Yeah, I
talking
just
about.
need to know what your,
All right, so, as you always have to be oriented, looking at this map. But this is St. Mary's Road. We're sitting about here. So this is St. Mary's Road. And the structures are here and here and here. And this area is the big feed. And see how long, this is all part of the,
It's called,
Common.
it's the common field or the big field of Grand Champ.
the farming rights were meted out to citizens by the government in control of time. I don't remember which government.
It would have been the Spanish.
Spanish government. And it was long, narrow, because because ox-drawn or
Plows.
plows are hard to turn, so, and so the farming this and the fact that it's continuing to be farmed active is just part of what they see. So they go, okay, we're located here, we've got these buildings right here, we've got the state that we can cooperate with, and we've got this view of the big field. It's kind of the natural thing to do.
What the last discussion was with them was to have the Amarillo House, which is state-owned, the Creole House, which is state-owned, the Beckett Remote, which is now privately owned, and the big fields, Le Grand Champ, and down to the Kern House, which is state-owned, which encloses a French structure. That was all to be designated in the boundaries. And at that time, what they defined as the site was not that they owned all of that. They were going to take ownership of the state-owned properties. And then there would be in-holdings, such as the Beckett Remote, and there's Mrs. Zarinelli's house, and the big fields. But they would not own them, but by being included in the boundary of the National Historic Site at the time, they were protected so that there could not be any inappropriate use of those areas, of those fields, while they were within that boundary. The federal government could, National Park Service basically said, these are protected. If you're going to do anything with them, you're not going to build, hotels and all this kind of stuff on this historic properties. So they weren't talking about taking ownership of all of it. It was ownership of the state-owned properties. And then, I don't know what the private ownership agreements would be, but that was their definition of the site and how it was going to be inclusive, because they said anytime they expanded, they had to go back to Congress to do it. So they wanted to do a large area out there at the edge of town with those historic buildings in situ across from those fields still that had the historic viewscape. And then the rest of it towards town in the historic district would be the affiliated area, which would connect it to the National Park Service. It would allow the city and the affiliated area to use the Arrowhead insignia. They could even name a National Historic area out of, using the Arrowhead area for the historic district. They even said they could get grant money, they could put in sidewalks, they could create interpretive materials, the whole thing. So that's what they proposed to us. And then there were alternatives that they were going to come up with, and that's what the report is supposed to give to us that Bob was talking about.
I just mentioned that it came to me that one of the concerns was that the Beckett Ravoux house was in poor repair. And last year it was. We acquired that house in December, and we've been working on it since then, and the house is now restored. So there would be no expense to the government whatsoever in the ownership or maintenance of that property. And we're also working on the other property, the other buildings that are on the property right now. And so it's kind of that part is kind of a longer term situation. But we have two of the outbuildings that we're working on at the present time, and the house is finished. So that's the lay of the land on that one that is called out in the original bill.
And none of this will happen without the consent of the property owners. I mean, everybody needs to be able
Capital
to.
outlay that they're looking at, I mean, depending upon cooperation, what the state would decide to do is very minimal. I mean, if you're going to come in and set up a park, you're not going to have to buy, or again, as far as the capital outlays for property would be probably very minimal. So that's certainly a positive thing. That's in our
These
favor.
properties contain 2 of the remaining 5 post-in-the-ground houses left in the United States. That's why,
I've seen them.
yeah, very, very unique.
Started my tourism tour in St. John.
Right.
Those homes.
Yep.
And let me give you a little blurb from a conversation I had with Tim Good, who runs Whitehaven. He said when he testified in Congress about this, he told them that
And this was in 2007?
Yes, I believe about that time.
Okay.
And it'll be 10 years next year that we've been working on this. He told them that these properties and this site, in his opinion, historically, are as important as the Arch or any of the monuments in D.C. So he said he could not convey to them the importance he felt that these represented.
I think it's also, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, I shouldn't say that,
Pardon me?
putting words in his mouth. More recently, he's talked about how he thought that managing it would be something that would not be a burden on the Park Service.
Right.
We had, in his office, Whitehaven, St. Louis could take overall management of it. I mean, he's been very supportive of the study. I mean, I think he recognizes the importance of St. Genevieve.
Has the state of, have you brought in conversations with your state representative, Kevin Eagler, and state senator?
Yes, they have been at meetings
Okay.
prior to this on this. When we first started on this, it was 2005.
You've had turnover in state reps, state senators, and Congress.
Well, but both Engler and Romine are quite familiar. We've taken the opportunity to keep them informed.
Because I would think that if this process starts moving, that they would have to also pass legislation out of the House and Senate to transfer ownership of the state property.
Yes.
Because that had to happen when the state parks were transferred for the national park along the Ozark National
Right.
Scenic Riverways.
Right. Big River. I mean.
Not big.
Current River.
the
Current.
No, it's not Current River. It is Big Springs.
Big Spring.
That's what it's, Round Springs. Yes, and they have been. We have kept our upper echelon always involved and send the reports to them. They then keep our representatives involved. They've attended the meetings. So, yes, they are on board with it.
You said that Big Field is still being farmed. Who controls Big Field? Who owns?
There are private owners that own various segments of land. You can still see that they're kind of long, narrow lots of land, and they are farmed. I guess part of that is part of the levy district, and they might rent from the levy district.
Well, the city actually owns.
Well, the city owns the part of that.
City
Yeah.
owns some of it because of the federal levy, but it's mostly privately owned. If there was any kind of a hiccup there, some of the farmers may say, you know, you're not going to tell me, federal government, that I can keep farming this forever. You know, they may think that there's some kind of a catch there. Those guys might think that, you know, what's the catch behind this? And all we would be, you know, they'd be asking or telling them is, no, this has to continue to be farmland
And
forever.
as a practical matter, it's not something you would develop anyway.
Right.
Well,
right.
Mr. Roth has got a business there.
Yeah.
But those stipulations would need to be guaranteed in statute in protecting those landowners' rights, because I've seen how that can change. I have concerns with that, because I'd want to make sure first and foremost the landowners would be able to utilize their farm ground like that they want to.
And at our last meeting.
Because that's not always been the case along national parks in our district.
At our last meeting in St. Louis, they said that one of the things that they wanted to do was send a personal invitation to any of the landowners that would be within those boundaries to come to the meeting so that they could have a discussion with them and make sure that they understood.
That's so important.
What's going on. So the National Park Service, it's a shame Tim's not here, but the National Park Service has really shown an interest all along in keeping the public informed. And I think Bob would agree, they're very concerned about not coming in looking at like they're stomping on people and taking land and this kind of thing. They've shown nothing but concern about the perception of the National Historic Site and the National Park Service coming in, and they did not want to go forward if they felt that there was a substantial segment that was against it. So they've been real cautious and very
Good to hear.
courteous about that.
You just mentioned the raw, it would be nice if somebody could purchase that across the street and maybe turn it back into a park, or maybe a visitor
Agrarian.
parking lot, or.
Because that's the
back in
only
ag-
segment that's not agrarian out there in the big fields now.
The big field's always been a part of our fabric. When we were incorporated as a city in August of 1808, the first one in Missouri, the first law or ordinance they passed had to do with the fence around the big field.
Mm-hmm.
That's
it
good
was-
history.
And it was, every
That's really
time
good
since
history.
then, yeah.
So have you gotten much opposition at this
None.
point? None. I didn't think so, I just wondered.
That's really
Yeah,
good.
that might change when somebody gets a letter that says, come to City Hall to talk about
Right.
what's going to happen, but yeah, it's not a secret.
Right.
And these guys back here, and these guys here, making sure it's, because every meeting we have, they publicize, and the community's well aware of it. Now, the specifics obviously are not well known, because we don't know what they're going to be.
Right.
Until we see that report, we're not privy to.
And that report's not until September 2015.
That's what
Is
I
that
would,
you said?
that's when it would go to the director of the National Park Service.
By the way, we've had other deadlines that they were expecting to have it in what, April and June, then August, and now it's November.
It's
Right, but
actually,
those delays, they said, were due to getting the approvals, get everybody on board agreeing with it before they would come to the public with it. Because if they're going to make a positive recommendation, they wanted the Secretary of the Interior, and they wanted all of these people, even the President, to be with them before, because they don't want to go out there and say, yes, we should do this, and then somebody up the line go, no, no, we aren't. I didn't know anything about this. So they've taken all this time because they send it here, then there's revisions, then they send the revisions back to that same person, then they go on to the next one.
Go to Director
And so that-
Jarvis, Sally Jewell.
Right, and so what they led me to believe was that by the time they came back to St. Genevieve, they basically would have everybody in agreement with what their proposal was, so that as soon as they got done and there was no real opposition here, they would then take it to Congress.
The last part is to develop an economical management approach, and we want to work with them on that. We're not asking them for a big, multi-thousand acre facility that's split up in different sites that they have to manage and have people working there. We see this as a compact site that is more easily managed.
the study was for the county, was it not?
Well,
It
it's,
wasn't just
the
a city
public law
thing.
said the county, and then it talked about some specific areas, and I can give you a copy of that. I brought a copy with me of the law that initiated the study. And there was a question earlier this year about the Old Town site. Somebody had expressed a concern, and Sharon Miles, the project coordinator, said that they had to go back and address that issue. We haven't seen the Old Town site since 1935.
So is now just a waiting game?
Well,
there's
I think
nothing-
it's important to get this report out to the public, have that public meeting here in St. Genevieve as soon as we can.
Is it a
And then-
90-day comment period?
I thought Sharon told me it would be 30 days.
30 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that will all be taking place before September 2015?
Yes, because then they,
Okay.
after that public meeting, they go in and look at these management alternatives, come up with a final recommendation, go through the approvals that Alicia.
Okay, so
It's basically a
it's
plan.
exactly
It's a
what,
management.
management plan, which, yeah, I'm
Yes.
very familiar with that process.
Yeah.
It was my understanding they were going to try and get back to St. Genevieve before the end of this year.
Well, yeah, it should be, the last, I heard just last week was
November.
was when the report would come out, so it.
But it's
it
this
may-
November.
Yeah, that's what,
Yes,
that's
this
for the.
November.
But that's for local
for the
review and
public
editing.
comment. So it probably will be December, January before we get that public meeting here.
Right.
Okay.
Well, when we talk about the management of this, you said that in your conversations with Tim, that he felt like he could be part of the management of this, or he could manage it, or was that?
Out of his office.
You want to tell them the discussion we had?
Basically, he said that he could use money from Ulysses S. Grant, part of that budget, to help manage down here. So take care of it here. Possibly not have, like, the Amaro open, it could just be, you would walk up on the steps and look in and that kind of thing, but that he would take it on as part of his budget.
So that would mean the federal government wouldn't have to allocate any new money?
Basically.
I would hate
We'll
to
always
see
have
us, I would
operations
hate to
and
see us
maintenance
sell
going
ourselves short.
Yeah.
I mean, no money and no money can have two different, you know.
I would.
There's no money, there's no money.
Well, he's probably gonna
We know
have to get more, but it would come
Yeah,
out
I wouldn't
of
go
the
so far
budget
as to
from
say that
there.
they wouldn't have to have any new money.
But it wouldn't
I think what he's trying to
necessarily.
say is that he
I've not
is willing
seen
to
any
work.
federal agency not ask for more money.
Right.
But I'm,
They don't need a new office, a new management.
no, they won't need a new office, and he will have it added into his budget, and then he will take care of it.
And that's what happens. I mean, in government, when you have a new place given to you, as we have all had experience with, you have to work into getting that in the budget. And so you take it on, and he's going to take it under the wing of Whitehaven, and he's going to operate it under the wing of Whitehaven. And I'm sure that in the future, it will eventually have a budget of its own. And once the management is settled of how they're going to operate it, because you don't know until you start working with the place a little bit. You've got to assess what you need to be doing to have the type of visitation that a national park has, as opposed to what a state park has. You know, what do they have to do? So, you know, there's a lot of things that he's going to have to assess for a while and just kind of see how it operates, and then be able to have a knowledge base from which he can go and say, okay, we need this kind of a budget for this place. And so what I would say is probably what they're going to look at is taking it under the wing of Whitehaven until the management is clear, and then possibly having a set-aside budget that would be for itself.
But that's probably one of the proposals they're looking at, how they do it, or.
As one alternative.
Right.
If they'd have a partnership or something like that.
Yeah, I would assume that if it's anything like other general management plans that they would propose, they would have like 3 different alternatives, and then they would have the park recommended alternative, and then have it up for public comment for people to respond to. I do want to introduce Ryan Hart is my legislative director from DC, who's in the district for the farm tour. He handles all my ag issues, but he also handles all of my natural resources committee, and the committee that I serve under, natural resources, has all jurisdiction for the National Park Service. I mean, I'm the only one from Missouri that is on that committee in the State House or even in the Senate. And so Director Jarvis, the National Park Service Director, and also Secretary Sally Jules before our committee quite often. So if there's ever, they know me quite well on other issues, but if there's things that you need asked or that you want to, you know, get answers to throughout this process, we can get those. So that's something to stay in direct contact and get Ryan's contact information too, because that's one of the advantages of being on that committee right now. So we've watched national parks all over the country being designated, and it's an eventful process.
Yeah, and there's, as you're finding out, all sorts of management partnerships. There's some areas that are designated by the federal government but ran by the state. There's private entities that run sites that are on federal land. You can get a federal designation and not necessarily have federal workers managing it, or you can. I mean, there's just, as you were well aware,
Yeah,
there's
that's
all
what I
kinds of
meant about
options.
proposals, because that was brought up one time before.
Very good.
The only concern that comes up a lot when other people talk about designating various locations throughout the country is easements that would run off of the park onto adjoining private land that would restrict what activities private landowners could carry out on land that wasn't in the federal designation, but because they own land next to it, there's some sort of easement that reaches out onto their private land. That's normally a large concern. And so you'd want to avoid any of those if at all possible.
That's what I was talking about in the legislation, just being specific.
Well, they had talked about negotiating a right of first refusal on any of the, what we call in-holdings. The landowners within the boundary, you know, that they would negotiate that if they ever decided to sell it, or they'd even ask that they leave it, you know, if they would leave it to them in their will. And so they were talking multiple alternatives on how the property that would be within the boundary of the site, that the owners would be contacted and talked to and given options and that kind of things. Because I do know that there's one in the area that would like to sell, and so that's something they would negotiate.
This area is a national treasure, and all you have to do is walk down the street there to, walk down the streets, because it's all over. And so it's something that I think would be nice for not just the state of Missouri to appreciate, but for people all over.
We like to call it the other colonial America. Because this was going on when a lot of the other side of the nation was going on.
It's true.
Unfortunately, they lost the French and Indian War.
We had the Canadian Regent
Oh, yeah.
in our office,
It was-
and he was very interested in coming and visiting
He was a consulate from the,
Chicago.
From Chicago.
Oh,
yeah.
We've had Chicago
Okay.
and
consulates.
he saw on our Twitter account where we had visited Saint Jean, and being a French, and he's like, well, I started doing research and was very impressed and didn't know about it, and I want to go down there. So, that was just from when we were here a few months
Yeah, I
back.
was just going to say, Sandra will have to get an invitation out.
I'm actually going on vacation next week to France, so.
He was actually the consulate from Canada, but the French
Oh.
sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We've had the French
So he
government.
would have strong connections,
Uh-huh.
So we had the
absolutely.
French,
Yeah, most of
France,
the
the
original
consulate.
settlers were from Quebec and Montreal.
Yeah. He knew all about it after.
well, in the 5 that are in North America, 3 of them are up there and 2 here is the vertical logs?
No, 3
No,
are
they're
here.
3 are here. I've got it
One is in
reversed.
Natchitoches and one in
Right,
Baskin.
so, we share that love of those vertical houses, and they are significant.
Was there anything that we need to be doing?
Maybe this is out of order, but if there's anything that you can do to hurry the system along a little bit, the process along a little bit. We've been looking forward to this for a long, long time.
I'll tell you what my recommendation would be, and it's kind of the same thing as Hank was saying. Maybe contact the people in the National Park Service that are working on this and express your interest and your support and see if there's anything that you can do that could help them with what they're doing. You know, I don't want the National Park Service Committee that's worked on this, they've really worked hard on getting this through. And I don't want them to think that, you know, we want you to go in there and stomp on them and get them moving, because they can only move as fast as their governmental entities will let them move. But I think if they know, you know, that you're there, and if they need you to help them move things along, that you would support doing that, you know, that would probably be a nice thing to do.
Okay.
Just letting them know you're paying attention is going to make a big difference.
That's the biggest.
And that's why I said, if you just express your interest,
Yeah.
that, you know, you met with us and you're very supportive, and you just want to check and see how the thing is moving.
I think it would be a great idea to have them brief us in DC
That'd be a good
of
idea.
where the status is and their estimated plan and time of the events.
But like I said, they've been wonderful. They really have been. And we
And a
don't
lot
want
of
them to
times,
think that.
in some of the other management plans with other agencies, they'll release those to us before they release them to
Right.
local entities or the public, so.
And that may be something that you could get.
Well, and us seeing the plan would be critical too, so that's.
Yes.
Yeah,
but we-
be nice to know what's in there before you get a
Absolutely.
constituent calling you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good.
It's never nice whenever a general management plan comes out from the Park Service, since everything that you requested not to be in it. So, so it's always
Well,
good to see it way before it ever comes.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and we're, you know, just kind of working on informal communications they've made, or maybe implications that we picked up on that aren't part of what's going to happen. Who knows?
Usually you can get a pretty good barometer, I think, so maybe that's a good sign for
Right.
Sanjan.
And I'm sure that they are under a situation that they can only release so much information because of the fact that the approvals have not been
Mhm.
given to them yet. So, you know, they've got their constraints they're working under, and you're liable to be able to get more information than we would, simply because of the position you hold. So,
You never know.
you never know.
Doesn't hurt asking. Sometimes you might get more.
Kind of what I'm thinking.
But we do hold the purse strings, so.
And they've always been very upfront with us on that says, you know, this Congress is going to make the decision on whether a park is ever placed in St. Genevieve or not.
Yeah, they give the recommendations. Creating a park has to be legislation. So, and then the appropriations. So.
And as they've described, sometimes parks get created without their recommendations.
That is very factual.
Is there anything non-Park Service related you guys want to throw at us while we're here?
Yeah, could you solve that Ferguson problem? You're the only elected
Well, but it's a
official
bad
who
road.
hasn't opined.
I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't heard anything, I haven't heard nothing about it. I've heard nothing about it. We
St.
actually-
Louis County's not in our district.
Yeah, I know.
Jefferson County is as far as we go north.
I'm aware about that.
We had our first farm tour stop this morning, I'm telling everybody this, but we got a call right as we were getting ready to leave that the TV station was wanting to come and do an interview at the farm. So we thought, okay, well, they're 10 minutes out, so we waited 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, show up. I let the guy know, I was like, hey, we've got to be at Park Hills, we're running behind. He's like, I just need 5 minutes. Sets up his camera, gets Jason on there, asks 2 questions about Ferguson.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That was it. So,
Isn't that amazing?
anyway,
Well, I was in New York this weekend. You know, where you stand depends on where you sit.
sure,
But
yes.
it was like, okay, war in Iraq, war in Ferguson. And that was all you had on the news.
That's it, yeah.
2 wars going on.
Well, Well, that's, I mean, and the president came back from vacation just for those 2 reasons.
Those 2 reasons,
According
yeah.
to the press, so.
Well, and I got an alert from Fox 2 News that there had been another shooting.
We heard that,
Yeah.
Representative Engler told us that at our last stop,
Yeah,
somewhere
a
in St.
policeman
Louis.
shot
Yeah,
the
it's
guy
in
with a knife.
City of St. Louis.
Yeah.
In North
Not
St.
related?
Louis.
No.
Not
Yeah,
related.
that's the
But
problem.
there
It's
was-
just, well, there's lots of problems.
They'll,
No.
they'll probably find a way to connect.
I'm sorry I brought that up.
Appreciate that. Did you have something?
If there's not anything else, I've got cards, and seriously, email me, and we'll get in contact with the Park Service and follow up and meet with them in DC and see what their take is on this project, and then hopefully tie everything together. So,
That's great.
Thanks for getting together on this meeting to at
The
least
only-
see.
It's our
what-
pleasure.
what we're
Little
seeing.
minor thing, I know Senator Thorne's office has been kind of working on it, and I could be mixed up a while ago and somebody from your office had called about our post office and the lawn, I guess that was the week
Yeah.
before your fete.
Yeah, we-
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess somebody did something, but
Yeah.
Who did something was downtown renewal group.
was it?
went in
Okay.
Oh, you went?
Yeah,
And cleaned up.
We
the-
did it ourselves.
Oh, you did it?
With his permission, with the postmaster's permission.
Yeah, the new
I was
guy
gonna
is really
say, They were like,
very cooperative and nice to,
We have some.
a whole different.
Well, most
We
of
weren't
the
gonna go
local-
into our major event with it looking like that,
Mm.
and there still are paint chipping issues.
been trying to
on
get them
concrete.
to do something with the soffit and the
Flagpole.
flagpoles all.
Right.
Tom Schulte inquired a year ago.
Well, when Senator Blunt came through, he was very upset.
Yeah, and he put his staff on it, and they got some communication back, said, sorry, we don't have any money.
So
Well, so-
you guys can help on that at all.
I think
so far
we've gotten, like, thanks for bringing it to our attention. So I don't know.
Even though it's been to their attention.
Yeah, we've done another
so we,
inquiry.
yeah, and I know Donna's actually working on it. When they called, they gave her, she's been working on it with Caston here, talking back and forth on what she's doing, so they're kind of collaborating, I think, working at it together, so
Maybe they just need louder attention.
hopefully they can get something accomplished.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Great, appreciate it.
Well, you get called up and apparently.
Channel 7 and 98 TV and web broadcasting are made possible through contributions and donations from viewers like you. Thank you for your support.